Okay.
Tell me to go.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jessica Mitchell,
And I am Diogo Duarte.
and Diogo and I have been working closely together for about 4 years now. I met Diogo about April 2016, and we started out as friends. I was mostly drawing then. I'm a psychotherapist, and Diogo was a fine art photographer. We started playing around with ideas together and making art, kind of like a game at first, and just because we like talking with one another. Eventually, kind of that initial process of play emerged into our long-term collaborative project called Sourpuss the Opera. And it's about a character we invented called Sourpuss, and it's coming out as a book later this year, and it's with drawings and photographs. But eventually, kind of via making this book together in this project, we got really interested in the whole idea of collaboration and what that means. And just lately, we've been pushing on into new mediums, particularly like around needlework. And we've been working on a tapestry, we're just starting, that explores kind of our own personal histories and how these intersect and how our universes have become joined as kind of people and artists. And I really were interested in ideas around blurring the authorship around artworks. And we're going to tell you a little bit about that today. Oh, and Diogo, sorry. I wanted to know first, why is it you're an artist anyway?
I think it's worth mentioning that we didn't tell each other the questions we're asking each other in advance, which we thought we'd keep it interesting. So,
yeah.
Why am I an artist anyway? Well, I don't know. I struggled with that word for a long time, and to some extent I still do. So I'm not really entirely sure what that means. At a very basic level, it's just about creating for me, whatever is it that I'm creating. And if I'm creating, I'm making art somehow. And I do it because I don't know what else to do. And I always have done, So it's how I escape myself and how I have perspective on things. And so if you want to call it an artist, then I guess so. Yeah. Yeah. Which is kind of funny that you started off asking that question, because I have a very similar question for you.
Okay.
Which is that, yeah, I mean, obviously I know that you've struggled for a long time with calling yourself an artist, and that you haven't thought of yourself as an artist for a variety of reasons, and you're in a better position to explain what they are than I am. But I'm wondering if you still feel that you're not an artist, or whether the recent, our collaboration and our recent projects have changed that. And if so, what made you feel like an artist? What has made you change?
Okay. Can I say first, there is a little bit of a sound that sounds like a washing machine on my end in the background.
In mine too, but
okay. No, something has joined us from the spirit
yeah.
world. Okay. What has well, I guess I still don't have a real definition for what an artist is. For me, maybe it's just somebody who makes stuff and then calls it art, has the nerve or craziness to actually call it art. So kind of I've settled on that actually. But I suppose for me, it only really occurred to me, as you know, like when I met you, I didn't. I remember the first day when I showed you some of the art that I was making, which I didn't call art, did I? At a cafe in Brixton, I showed you some of my dreams that I drew, stick figures and things like that. And I hadn't actually shown anyone ever before. But as it turned out, I had been drawing for years, hadn't I? Keeping a book. I had loads and loads and loads of drawings, and I'd also been doing needlework and things, but I really had never shared it with anyone. I don't know why. I guess it was like the typical thing. Like in school, I'd always been told I was terrible because I don't know how to do art, do I? I can't draw mostly anything but stick figures. I have no sense of perspective or anything proper, but somehow I always wanted to kind of put things down in a kind of visual sense. Mm-hmm. And I guess as I'm getting older, I guess it was something about meeting you, and just thinking, what the hell, kind of go for it. We started out, didn't we, making photographs, and I was just kind of acting out in those and coming up with ideas. And I guess I just sort of something about that. I thought, why not go for it? I'll be 55 this year. And it was something about thinking, embrace it. And plus, I've always liked to communicate. I'm a psychotherapist. I used to be a journalist. And it's kind of a new way of communicating with people, I think. It's provoking reactions. It's getting ideas flowing. And I guess I kind of love it for that, really. And I suppose that, I still feel sometimes embarrassed. I want to apologize for myself. Like what right do I have to say I'm an artist, But what the heck, eh?
Yeah.
I guess I wanted to ask you, it was when I met you, you were mostly like doing solo work. You had that wonderful series of self-portraits which explored aspects of your own identity and your life struggles and things. And then bang, suddenly we were like working together. What's that all about? Why that shift, to suddenly kind of collaborating with me?
It honestly doesn't feel like a shift to me.
Okay.
I guess from someone who's on the outside, and me doing mostly in the past quite slick, well finished work on a solo basis that sometimes kind of sort of verges on being confused with commercial or fashion work. It might look quite different to what I used to be doing, but to me it doesn't. I suppose I don't think about it that way. All my work is deeply personal, and so that hasn't changed. It's just that we talked, we haven't mentioned, but the character that we both invented, South, was the opera. She's I take the photographs of her, you perform her, and it's your body and it's your face, but I still think it's fundamentally me at a very egocentric level. You think it's you, and in the end it's us. So I don't know. I don't think of it in that way. I don't think of it as a huge shift. I'm still doing what I love. I'm still doing very personal work. The process feels extremely different, though. The process is incredibly different, and it's much more rewarding. And I don't have to live inside my head as often because I can speak, we can talk, and God knows we talk a lot. But yeah, the process feels very different, but somehow it doesn't feel like a big shift.
Okay.
Yeah. Speaking of process, actually, this is segueing into quite nicely into each question into each other. Anyway, you talked about your drawings being quite. I don't know if you mentioned if you use childlike yet, but of having to apologize it somehow. But for those of you who don't know Jessica's style of drawing, you're quite fast, right? Quite a fast process, and I obviously know that you are an incredibly impatient person, like me, and I just wonder whether do you think your art would look different if you were more patient, and if so, what kind of art would you be doing?
Oh, it kind of makes me nervous, actually, that, because I joked recently, like when my partner said to me, like, you just fling those drawings out, don't you? And I joked that I might seem to fling them out, but it took me a lifetime to be this free, And I guess I'm quite terrified, actually, to tell you the truth.
I'm just sorry to interrupt you. Whilst you talk, I'm just going to show people some of your drawings on your website. So
okay, yeah, I guess I'm quite terrified by the idea of slowing down. I have to say, to tell you the truth, in drawing, every time I do, I feel like I lose something. I lose some kind of impulsivity. I lose some intensity of expression. Sometimes I just like to draw in fits of emotion, or I draw like right after I've had a dream or a fantasy or something like that. And it's really weird when I try to kind of settle down and do it, I kind of start somehow overcomplicating it, and things get really fussy. So I don't know, maybe it's a kind of fear. But then I'm also afraid to learn how to draw properly. Like I've looked at doing classes and things, and sometimes I'm really afraid that it will take something from me. On the other hand, I do like doing something slowly, like the tapestries that I was making, the quilts using applique, they're all hand sewn, and that took me like 7 years to do some of like those panels, and that kind of work is much slower, actually. So it's not like I don't ever like to slow down, kind of thing. But it's true, isn't it? Maybe, I don't know what that is about me. I just don't. Sometimes I do feel frivolous in it, I guess. Like, does this count that I haven't spent ages agonizing over something? Um, yeah, I don't know that I'll ever be able to slow down where the drawing is concerned. I really don't. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
does that answer it for you?
it does, but I think that just raises another question, which is the second time you've mentioned it, which was this idea, the feeling guilty or how to draw proper. I guess I'm just wondering, what does that mean for you? What would it mean for you to draw properly, and why would you? I mean, we've talked so much about this ourselves. What does it all mean anyway? But what would it mean for you to be able to draw properly? Should you be able to draw perspective and beautiful light?
Yeah.
Is that something that you fundamentally actually really love to, or it's no longer about that actually anymore?
Well, I mean, I guess I do think a lot about really what I'm interested in. I suppose in a lot of ways, I guess, is talk and ideas, almost as much as the kind of final image and what it looks like. Obviously, I wouldn't bother drawing things, but I am a psychotherapist. I was a journalist, radio. I love words, not just images, and so my drawings often have a lot of words and things like that. So I guess there's kind of that. But I guess I don't know what it would be like to be able to draw properly. Sometimes I figure if I could, then maybe I could like choose to draw in a childlike way or something. That why not kind of learn. But let's face it, both of us know my personality. I always say I'm like not a baker, but I love to cook, and I'm a fling it in kind of cook. I always overcomplicate things, don't I? I'm slapdash. Like the idea that I'm going to suddenly kind of sit down and learn something slowly, it's not actually very like me, is it? I'm kind of kidding myself. It's almost like a fantasy that I'd be a different sort of person, isn't it? I think.
Kind of.
Yeah.
I guess that kind of goes into a later question that I have for you. But yeah, that does answer it.
Yeah. And what about you? I wonder, like, why, you do all these wonderful photographs, so kind of beautiful, and things. And when I first met you, certainly, the way you stage them at times, you're so meticulous about everything. Why would you want to give that up and shift into entirely new mediums? Like we've been doing these like exquisite corpses games involving joint drawing together, like recently, where we draw hidden from one another and things, just with whatever. And also with the needlework, which you know nothing about, do you? Right? You'd have to learn from scratch. I mean, why do that? Why knock yourself back to year zero?
Well, I'm just going to show people some of what you're talking about. So these are some of my self-portraits that I did, and obviously they are extremely composed and thought through and staged. Obviously, it's incredibly staged. I suppose I just became interested in different things, So I did this kind of work for as long as it made sense, and there was never a conscious decision of I'm going to stop or I've reached an end. I just did it for as long as it made sense, and one day it didn't, And so I wouldn't think, I definitely don't think of my current work as lesser or higher than what I'm doing or what I did before. It's just different. And I guess one thing that I can definitely say that has happened is that I've become more interested in the idea more so than the whether or not the image is aesthetically pleasing, and that has definitely been a shift in my practice. It's a really difficult one, isn't it? Because I think there's definitely that whole thing in art history about art having to be pleasing to the eye, and it is nice. It is nice when something is pleasing to the eye, isn't it? But it's not the point all the time, It's not definitely what I'm interested in at the moment. I'm not entirely sure that that was all I was interested in before. It's not like I was just doing aesthetically pleasing images, but somehow the two cohabit, cohabit. Anyway. So, and it's not that I'm doing ugly things now either. It's just that I'm not thinking so much about that. I'm more interested in the ideas behind it, you know? So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Ask it again, just to make sure.
Yeah, well, I guess really, in a way, I guess I was thinking about, is it, challenge? What's it like to kind of give up something that you're so highly trained in, and to move like me into doing something you have no training in a way that you're kind of making up as you go along? Does that feel risky?
Yeah, well, another thing that I would say is that I definitely felt like I was highly specialized in photography, you know. In a lot of areas, I didn't think I was, and I definitely spent a lot of time thinking that I didn't know enough about it, you know. And I guess moving into completely different mediums to me it feels like a risk, but then it feels like I wasn't taking enough risks before, you know. And at some point, I guess if there was one single reason why I stopped doing the kind of photography that I was doing was because it was starting to feel a bit samey to me, you know, and I wasn't enjoying the process as much, perhaps, or I wasn't getting as much out of it. So this just feels like total fucking chaos because I am quite a controlled person, and I have a controlled personality, and I like to know where I stand all the time, and I like to know where I'm going, and to not have any idea about the outcome or the process, you know, even just collaborating with you and not knowing if the collaboration will survive, which is something that I'm sure that we have questions reserved for each other. That feels like a huge risk, you know, to me. But at the same time, it feels kind of thrilling and exciting, you know. So yeah, I'm kind of even though I'm very controlled, you know, that I am a bit of a risk junkie. I kind of like to, you know, to take risks. So perhaps that's part of the reason why, you know.
Yeah, you like to experiment with the abyss.
Indeed.
Boundaries, yeah.
Yeah. So I had a question reserved for you about that because, yeah. So as recently as yesterday, I told you that I cursed the day I decided to make art with you.
Yeah, yeah, you did.
You and I was wondering if you ever feel the same way.
Yeah, I was thinking about that when you said to me, you said something like, I promised myself I would stop, like after we finished the Sourpuss book. And, but I didn't, and then I said, well, why didn't you tell me? And you're like, well, it was a promise to myself and not to you. And then I found myself thinking, which I haven't said to you, like, yeah, but it's like not telling your partner that you plan on breaking up with them, like in October when it's, June, and then you think, oh, it's my decision, not theirs. And I thought, thanks for the heads up, mate, but that said, I think sometimes we do highlight the difficulties and challenges of collaboration. I mean, which it is really hard, isn't it? I mean, I think there's loads of love behind it, I guess I want to say first, because, there's so much trust, isn't there? Like we've talked about really, really personal things. I mean, Sourpuss is a very personal series. The creation of that character goes right to the heart of a lot of our own personal difficulties and shames and struggles with identity and things like that. And actually that character was created, that baby, as we talk about it, that we gave birth to, was born out of trust and our desire to relate to one another, right? I think so. So I really do want to say that. But then I guess what I'm going to think now, and I was thinking that even yesterday, like, after we had our talk, and I was just thinking about how everyone assumes it's easy to get on with other humans. And I think that's kind of a fundamental kind of misconception now, I think, as like a psychotherapist, is actually that it's really difficult to get along with other people and to be really close to them and to be honest. And well, anyway, I speak for myself. I find it difficult to get on with other people and to be close to them and to be honest. And so I guess why would collaboration be any different? And then it's the rewards of that, I guess, is what I think. But you asked me, I'm whispering on as I always do. You start out, and you always say, Jessica, why don't you answer the bloody question I asked you, which was actually, do I ever regret working with you? sometimes I just think, like, oh my God, I wish this could be easier. Why is it so painful? I can't stand this. But actually, I never really think that, just because I love it so much, and I love you too, and I just feel only like sad when I think that it wouldn't have happened.
It's starting to feel a little bit like a running joke that every single time we do an artist talk, that we open it. We open it by saying we just came back from a huge row, and um,
Yeah,
I'm I wonder if people believe us at all. But I guess in
yeah.
saying that, why do we? I guess why do you think we argue? Why isn't this collaboration just joy, and creation?
Yeah, well, interestingly on this, because my next question was you, like, what's the best and worst of working with me? What have you learned about yourself? So, I'm going to rope you into this too. Um, why isn't it easier? Oh, that's a very personal question. I don't have the answer to that. I mean, I did tell you yesterday, I'm
Not
jealous.
necessarily why is it easy? Why isn't it easier? But why is it difficult? Answer it from whichever angle you think is closest to you, I suppose.
Uh,
I,
well, I mean,
yes, but do carry on.
I guess I think both of us can be volatile people. And I think the same things that have driven us to collaborate so closely and obsessively, frankly, and to talk to each other so obsessively and to become such close friends and collaborators, those same are both of our struggles, or at least my struggle with boundaries and my urge to test the edges. Those same things that led to the lovely stuff also we come a cropper on sometimes. So like yesterday when we argued, it was about sort of, some pandemic stuff, in all honesty, and I sort of dug my heels in, didn't I? Sometimes I forget that, that I want to get along with someone and collaborate. I want to collaborate and get along with you, and I just want to win an argument. Or I want to make you a bad person and me a better person. And, I want to be vindicated. I used to sing a little song, with my partner, vindicate me and turn me on, like, I mean, I'm like that sometimes. I lose sight of what it is that I want out of the collaboration, and I want it to, punish you, and I want it to go up in flames, and I want to think, fuck you, this is, and then I come back from that because I really don't want that to happen. So I think it's our personalities, that lead to the good things and the difficult things. But I mean, I hope we keep learning from it myself. That's all I keep on, is that we.
Yeah, I said to you yesterday, didn't I, that the same reasons that brought us together are exactly the same reasons that drive us apart on a almost daily basis, quite frankly.
Yeah. Well, what's it like for you? I mean, it's like when you say things like that, when you think of cutting and running and you're thinking, oh God, I can't stand this anymore. Why keep on? I mean, especially as we're keeping on now.
Well, I guess that me and you share this belief somehow that we're not being held, or that we can't be held, and so I think we both share this idea that you better ditch before you ditched, kind of thing, kind of thing. So it's I think we both have an inherent fundamental lack of belief that someone is going to stay for you, or someone's going to see you through something. So my instinct, not just with you, but with most things in life, is to ensure my own survival. And I guess I'm sure a lot of people will feel the same way. And so I have to take things into my own hands. If I have my own destiny in my own hands, I know I can control it, supposedly. And if there's another person in the mix, then it complicates things, and it's a liability, and having you collaborating with me is a huge liability, because especially now at a point in my career where all of my artistic work, or about 90% of my artistic work, is work done with you. And so it feels like a liability on many levels, on a friendship level, and so many other places, to be frank. So how does one sustain that belief that it's okay, and that you can resolve, and that you can reconcile, And I don't know what the answer is, quite frankly, because I'm not sure why I keep going or why we keep going, and I'm not sure why I haven't just walked away, because I've certainly walked away from other people for far lesser things than you know. So it's a complicated question, I guess, and at the risk of sounding extremely cheesy, it's just like the core of our artistic practice is so is so special to us, I suppose, or it's so hard to find elsewhere, that it's just too. You said something like this yesterday, didn't you? It's just too much of a loss, you know. It's hard enough finding someone that you can be friends with. Hard enough finding someone that you can be boyfriends with, but let alone finding a really good friend with whom you can create, deeply personal art like I do with you, So I guess that's why we carry on. But anyway.
Yeah, it is definitely ideas that keep us going. I mean, one thing about us, we almost always do talk, don't we? I mean, yesterday actually, when we had our argument, or was it the day before, or whatever? I mean, we didn't talk. It was about as long as we haven't talked in 4 years, wasn't it? And it didn't even really amount to 24 hours, but it felt like ages, and it didn't feel good.
I know.
Yeah. So, yeah.
My next question for you,
okay,
is just bringing it back to our current body of work. So you've mentioned that. So we're doing some exquisite corpses where we post some. With the idea of blurring boundaries around authorship, we're both drawing exquisite corpses and posting them to each other, and we're creating villains, heroes, lovers, and fools of each other's lives. And the only thing that we say to each other is who we're drawing, and the other person sort of has to draw them, imagining what we know about them. But we're also going to move on to arraiol, which is a medieval Portuguese tapestry technique that I learned when I was quite young, but since forgotten. We're also playing with the idea of kind of digging into a little bit into Jessica's roots and doing some bobbin lace making in Slovakia. And so I guess there's all this kind of stuff up in the air, all these different mediums with which neither of us has absolutely no experience in. And I guess there's something, the word arrogant is coming to my mind. And I suppose the question that I had for you was that why, or what makes you think that you can delve into these mediums with and create work that is relevant? I guess I'm going to formulate the question in a different way. Does it feel arrogant to go into these mediums when we know that so many people dedicate entire careers to a specific medium, and especially given that these are mediums that are high technique, and you have quite a disregard for technique when it comes to the art making. So does it feel arrogant to you?
I guess sometimes I worry that I'll be accused of arrogance, and I think there is definitely a certain arrogance about me. I mean, at the heart, let's say there's some deep insecurity. Maybe a lot of people would say that. But certainly I do have an arrogance, I think. I think one thing I believe is very much that I like to occupy space, right? I talk about that, don't I? Like, I've loved doing the sourpuss character, being kind of, naked in those pictures, the big photographs we do, the idea of them being on the wall, the way sometimes people have been horrified by them, right? Like comments, we've had about the series sometimes. It's like, who does that woman think she is? And she wears no makeup and she has stretch marks and she sags. And I get kind of a glory out of that. I just think, here I am, I take up space. And I like taking up space.
And I take up space vicariously.
Yeah. Well, you take up enough space. But, I like this. I want to engage with the world. I kind of was brought up with that, like with a dad, it was very competitive. You always got to throw your hat in the ring, why not do it? And I guess it's like that. I like engaging with people and things. And maybe that you call that arrogance or something. But bear in mind, I never expected to sort of have any success or be doing anything like this. I was doing things because I loved it and because I liked it. And certainly when I started out with you, it was just mucking around and it was playing, and I liked it because of the ideas. You could call that arrogant, but you know, what the hell am I going to do? You know, I'll be lying on my deathbed, and what good will it have done me to hide my light under a bushel? After all, one of my drawings is the bright flame of Jessica Mitchell, right? A scribble I did, you know, and I think a scribble. I see. I shouldn't call it a scribble. I thought of it as a scribble in those days. One of the first drawings I did, and I guess it's like that. Maybe I am arrogant, but maybe it's just about wanting to exist and show myself and reveal myself, and you know, and hence like engage others. Why not? Right? Why not? What good? What good would it do me to hide? You know. So, yeah. What about you? I mean, I sometimes wonder, like, you know, about this whole blurring around like authorship and things, you know, like why that? I mean, right now, like in some of the work we're doing around exquisite corpses, I mean, really, you know, the whole ideas we've talked about recently are around like us not even being able to tell, you know, or others not being able to tell who did the art, bits of the artwork at all. And actually, we've even kind of really been playing with the idea with needlework, right? That we won't even be able to tell ourselves who did which sections of it. But I realize as I say that, why do I think I'll be able to learn Arielsh and those techniques you asked me? I don't have any confidence that I will, but you know, one foot in front of the other, right? I mean, what's the worst that can happen? You know, I discover that I suck at it and I hate it, and nothing ventured, nothing gained. But I mean, how about you? I mean, it's the same for you on these techniques. It's a new one, but you know, the whole blurring of authorship too is a kind of interesting and peculiar one. I mean, what makes you so interested in that? The blurring of personhood and of ownership of art.
It's a good question. I'm not sure that I have a well-formulated answer to that question, but it has been very interesting to me at a personal development, kind of corny, but plane, because I mean, you know, for those who don't know, I mean, Southwest the Opera started off as my project, right? It was my photography project. I was a photographer. I was trying, you know, I was developing a career. You weren't. You were a psychotherapist. You weren't remotely interested in becoming an artist. And at that point, you were my muse, you know, in the traditional sense of the word. You were my muse. And as things evolved, you became everything but a muse. And you became an equal collaborator in this. But somewhere along the way, I had to, whether I want to admit it or not, and whether it's attractive to admit so or not, I had to learn, I had to reconcile my ego around this, my artistic ego in what was in our collaboration. You know, it was my project, it was my photographs, and all of a sudden they were no longer just mine. You know, they were also yours, and so. But I'm saying that I was interested from a personal development kind of thing. It just became interesting to me to try to define, or even to just become aware. Why is it important that it's mine? You know, and I thought that question was really interesting, and I'm not sure that I have a formulated answer in words, but I definitely feel like I have a feeling formulated from it. You know. So it feels right to me to continue in that direction, and right now I really couldn't care less about, you know, whether my name comes first or not, or do I? You know, it's just one of those interesting things, you know. But it feels right to me. The emotion feels right. It sits right with me, and so that's why I'm carrying on and blurring things even more, you know, to a point where I'm kind of obliterating my own ego. You know, it's just like ego death. You know, is it him? Is it not him? And so somehow I just disappear. It's quite an odd thing, you know.
Yeah.
And who knows where this collaboration will go? Because so far we've been using our own names. You know, who knows if we'll eventually just morph into one and. It's true. who knows if we'll just start doing work where we're not even using our own names, and so I'm no longer Diogo Duarte. It's quite an odd thought, you know. But I think it's one last thing to reflect on it. I think at some point or another, I felt like it was polluting the quality of my work, because the reality of trying to make it somehow, or whatever that defines, that your name is attached to it all the time, and you are a person, you are an individual, competing against other people. It's an incredibly competitive thing, and to suddenly fall into a collaboration where it's anything but competitive, it just felt completely different. So I have no idea if I have anything remotely similar to an answer to you, but this is what I got.
Yeah.
Was it a bit of an answer or not really?
It was, yeah. I wondered whether you even like the artwork you're doing now. It's an interesting one. When you said you're less interested in how it looks, it's an interesting one, isn't it? When you actually look at the work yourself, right? Do you think, do you like that? Or is it sometimes oh my word, what the heck am I up to there?
Yes, I do. I mean, I've told you that before, right? That I sometimes look at what we're doing and I think, my God, what have I done? And I just want to clarify as well. Of course, I still have an ego. This is all very, very.
I think people probably noticed.
Yeah, exactly. This is all very well and good, but it's an interesting intellectual exercise. But I'm still preoccupied with the smallest of the mundane things that little humans worry about. Including how well we're going to do or whatever. So. But yeah, I do think that, what the hell am I doing? But I guess that has been a learning curve for me as well. Again, picking up on that thing about creating work that's technically perfect or aesthetically pleasing. It's been a really, really good process for me to unlearn all of that. Even though I was never formally trained in the art world, I don't have formal education in photography, formal education in the art world, and neither do you. But it's interesting that despite that, we still have very fixed ideas about what things should look like, So I kind of wonder what it would be like to attend, art college, and is that even more cemented? Perhaps not. But I definitely felt like I had very well cemented ideas about what things should look like. And I just find that interesting to unlearn that,
Yeah.
And it could be that in the end I still think that it looks ugly as shit, but not the point anymore. I doesn't feel like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to know from me?
Yeah, I kind of would like to just finish off. I mean, Jessica was just saying before we started this interview that she doesn't like to use the word cosmology because it feels incredibly poncy. But that's kind of what we're doing together. We're creating a tapestry of our own cosmology, our own lives and how they intersect and all that. And the question is, I mean, does it ever feel to you that our work is incredibly self-indulgent? And is that a bad thing?
Well, I think, I guess what I would say, I mean, it's a bit like, when I first became a psychotherapist, I'd always been really hot on politics and things like that. And I started out much more that way. And I was a journalist and I led a campaign organization and things like that. And I would say that I used to think, I was brought up certainly in Brooklyn where I was. I wasn't brought up in, the kind of America, working class Brooklyn where people did therapy. And I thought, this is ridiculous. People should, be interested in politics. All this obsessing about yourself is absolutely wrong. It's totally indulgent.
Yeah.
And then I changed. I hit a wall myself personally in my life. And I had psychotherapy and it really changed me and made me a much happier person, or a more resolved person at some level. And I kind of think that now, actually. It's not like I think the world of our internal worlds and our external worlds exist entirely independently. And whenever, to me, like you and I talk about things, our series, like Sourpuss, endlessly provokes discussion, doesn't it, around all kinds of things, sexuality and shame and how we live in the world and the ideas the world imposes on us and loneliness, and the whole work of our collaboration to me is all about that. Like, it's totally relevant now. Like, if I can't get on with you and I can't collaborate with you, how the hell can we ever get on with each other as a human species? Like, every time you and I overcome an argument, I also think it's political. I think it's defying the kind of tendency of this world to isolate and to shame and to shut down and to, have wars instead of communicating. And so, although I think our work is incredibly personal and can be seen as maybe indulgent, and certainly we do indulge ourselves in a lot of very personal conversations, I guess to me it is all about being engaged with the world and ideas that are really relevant. Of course, it is to some extent about like identity issues. But, I'm into that. I'm a psychotherapist, actually, a person-centered psychotherapist. I believe the person is a magnificent thing, the right flame of Jessica Mitchell, the right flame of Diogo Duarte, our urge to be ourselves and to express ourselves in the world before we bloody die. I mean, it's terrible to have that destroyed, for me.
I think, yeah, I definitely feel that sometimes, that it is. For reasons completely alien to the actual work, reasons of childhood and what you should and shouldn't be talking about and all that kind of stuff. But I have to believe that, if every time an artist makes something, it functions as a mirror to myself, and perhaps sometimes I see something and sometimes I don't. I have to believe that my work does the same thing to other people, without wanting to control whatever, the message, whatever, but I have to believe that it's relatable, because it is communicating, isn't it? I mean, if we were the only two people on the planet, I don't think we'd be creating art. I really, really don't.
That's an interesting question.
I don't. I honestly think, if I was the only person on the planet, would I be taking pictures? Why would you, though?
Yeah.
What would be the point?
You might anyway, because out of crazy, there's a scene in like this really crap movie where they have to tunnel to the middle of the earth because, I don't know, the earth has stopped spinning. And I've talked to you about it. And the guy there, he's writing a book and he's talking into his recorder seconds before he dies.
Yeah.
And then he says, what the hell am I doing? And he flings away and then he explodes. But I sometimes think about that. Would I be driven, at that last minute as if I was communicating with someone else? It's like, yeah. I don't bloody know.
I don't think I would. It's just, for me, art is language, and so who am I communicating with? I'm not that self-indulgent to the point where I have to communicate with myself, and so for those reasons, I don't think that any work is completely self-indulgent. I don't think it's possible, actually, even if you intended it to, because you no longer control it when it's done, isn't it? I mean, it's no longer yours somehow.
Yeah. Once you have to fling it out into the world.
Yeah. Once the Sourpuss story comes out, it's no longer the Sourpuss we know. When our cosmology gets out there, it's no longer our cosmology, is it? It's just as much ours as it is anybody's.
Yeah, I love that idea. I mean, I love a bit of chaos, and all that kind of stuff. Great.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I have more questions for you, love.
I have no more for you, Honey Bunch. That is it. Perfect synchronicity. And
it's been good.
Yeah, thank you everybody for listening. And I think you're going to get to ask some questions, although I'm not technologically very good and I have no idea how that will happen. ESP, I think, actually. So.
And thank you very much to Susie and Samuel for the opportunity. Much appreciated. And yes, we look forward to sharing all the stuff that we will be up to. You can follow updates on our hopefully out this year book at Sourpuss the Opera on Instagram and on our each other's pages for other bits of the collaboration that we've been doing. Great.
Thanks, Dee.
Have a good day, everybody. Bye, Jessica.
Take care, everyone. Bye.